Hello my esteemed viewers. In this tutorial we will uh, carry on with two important derivations which are based on two fundamental principles which forms the founding stones of strength of materials. These two principles that we are going to explain clearly in this tutorial are the basis of strength of materials. It is not an exaggeration if I tell that, because these two principles are held at a place of sanctity. Those principles are the principle of superposition and principle of Saint Venant's principle. Principle of superposition is all about the net deformation when a axially loaded member is subjected to different kinds of axial forces and some of them may be positive, that is pulling, and some of them may be pushing, some of them are tensile forces, and some of them may be compressive forces acting at different points of the member. Then in such a case, the net effect, when these forces act simultaneously on the component, the net effect is algebraic sum of the effects of individual forces treated individually. This is the essence of principle of superposition. On a linear elastic structure, the combined effect of several loads acting simultaneously is equal to the algebraic sum of the effects of each load acting individually. In fact, this particular principle, it will become increasingly clear to all of us that this principle holds at several loading occasions, several kinds of loading occasions, because it is all about net effect caused by different forces on a particular element, be it a machine element, be it a structural element, or whatever. It will deduce the net effect, which may be algebraic sum. Algebraic sum means it is not arithmetic sum anyway. Algebraic sum justifiably gives equal weightage for positive effect and negative effect. Positive effect and negative effect matters as far as algebraic sum is concerned, and this principle is applied in order to find out the elongation or compression of non-prismatic members, that is the members whose cross-sectional area is not constant throughout their length or longitudinally. And you can see the legs of this particular table is tapering, and definitely if a person sits on this table, these components will be subjected to compression and they are non-prismatic in nature. This is a machine component which is a tapering bar. Here also there is a tapering bar, and the bridge piers are naturally will be looking like a flat plate. Of course, it is made out of concrete with a broader base and tapering top. And this is a tapered flat bar, and this is also a machine component which is tapering. And Saint Venant, a mathematician, French mathematician, studied the effect of statically equivalent loads on the twisting of bars, and his results were extended to be applicable for any kind of load as such. And the essence of his principle is the stresses in the vicinity of the applied load tend to be concentrated, hugely concentrated. As you move far away from the application of the point of load or point of application of the load, the stress will get averaged. It is as if we are applying some other system of stresses with a varied variation if it is in the proximity of the applied load, and it will become uniform if we do away or move away from the application point of the load. The difference between the effects of two different but statically equivalent loads becomes very small at sufficiently large distances from the load. And this is little intriguing, this particular actual principle of Saint Venant's. But anyway, it has the meaning of the proximity effects of the load and the load effects at a distant places. And he is the person, he is a mechanician and mathematician from France. He lived during 1797 to 1886. And here is a bar which is subjected to tension, and if you take the cross section at a distance of 0.5 b, that is half the breadth, and this will be the distribution, and it cannot be average. Average distribution is of course P divided by B into thickness, the average stress. And here you can see the peaked stress, and here the stress will be maximum, amounting to 2.58 times the average stress. And if you go for 1.5 b along the longitudinal axis of the member, you will see stress getting averaged to the tune of 1.15 p by a. And if you move up to 2.5 b, stress will be average. It is almost 1 into pa or p by a. The stresses, in essence, it can be concluded that the Saint Venant's principle means the stresses always tend to concentrate in the immediate vicinity of the load and becomes uniform at sections farther off from the load. Of course, his principle has been extensively used in order to find out stress concentration around the holes. And in a plate, if there is a hole, and if you pull the plate, the stress distribution around the hole will be complicated. And this is of course a photograph taken from a photoelastic bench where a component is subjected to some kind of a tension force. And here again you can see what happens exactly. The axial stress distribution becomes peaked over here, and it will become a little complicated due to stress concentration, because there is a sudden reduction in the area of cross section, and to the tune of diameter into thickness. That particular area is going to be lessened, and the entire stress otherwise average at some other places will become concentrated, because only a small area of cross section is available beside the hole. And we have seen in buildings, in order not to cut the trees, there will be a hole created in the concrete slabs, and around the stresses around this hole will be little severe, and the type of reinforcement to be placed in order to take care of the stress concentration will be something like this. And here also, for architectural purposes, there are holes left, but it will create a lot of severe stresses in the concrete slab. Anyway, we will go through the first derivation. The first derivation is all about finding the magnitude of elongation of a tapering bar subjected to tensile load. This is the tapering bar, tapering rod, of course, and this rod can be assumed to be made out of innumerable number of discs cemented together. Of course, varying diameter, which will vary linearly, and such innumerable number of discs will generate a kind of a tapering rod, something like this. This is the assumption that we are going to make, and this assumption will lead us very ease with which we can make a derivation. And here it is idealized into, it's a two-dimensional figure, because we can't afford to write a three-dimensional figure on a two-dimensional screen, or on a two-dimensional blackboard, or on a two-dimensional sheet of paper. Therefore, we choose a two-dimensional diagram which will reveal the entire dimensions of this tapering rod. Here it is D1 at one end, D2 at the other end, and D1 to D2 happens linearly, and so that at any point over the length we can interpolate and we can calculate the diameter. And we will consider a small disk, thickness, infinitesimally small thickness, equal to dx. It is very differential thickness, and it is so small so small. This assumption will make us to not to differentiate between this diameter and this diameter. Of course, truly speaking, this diameter, this side of the diameter of the disk is a little more than the diameter over here. But anyway, our assumption of small thickness will pave the way to assume that it is a rectangular piece, okay, of height the reduced d1 or increased d2, and we can calculate that, okay, at a particular distance. So we will consider a small disk elementary thickness or elementary length, because it is going along the lengthward direction, and change in diameter per unit length of the rod from here till here is d1 minus d2 divided by L per unit length. Now we will assume this to be a constant in order to ease out our derivation, because d1 is a constant, d2 is a constant, L is a constant, so constant divided by constant will also give us a constant. Let a disk of thickness dx be located at a distance x from left hand. Okay, here is the disk that we have assumed. The diameter of this elementary disk is d1 minus kx. It cannot remain to be d1, it is something lesser than d1, and this something is given by this, because if you move for a distance of L, the reduction is d1 minus d2 divided by d1 minus d2, and over the length, per unit length, it will be d1 by d2 by L, and anyway we have not moved for the unit length, we have moved for a distance x. Therefore at this particular point the diameter of this elementary disk that we considered is d1 minus kx. The area of cross section of the disk is automatically pi d square by 4 pi into d1 minus kx whole square divided by 4. This is the area of cross section of the disk. And elongation of the disk is, we apply the formula PL by AE, and you may our respected viewers may recall that PL by AE is the formula that we derived as a first derivation in order to find out the elongation in a prismatic bar or prismatic rod, which is subjected to axial load, of course. This is P into L. Here L for this elementary disk is dx, PL by AE. PL by AE. AE is pi d square. Of course, E is missing. I have to put that E. Sorry. Here it is. Yeah. Yes. 4. So the 4 comes from the area, which is taken to the numerator. So 4p dx over pi d square into E, 4pl by AE. Right. Elongation of the entire bar is 4p dx. Of course, here again E is missing. We'll do it in black only. Yeah. 4p dx E pi d1 minus kx whole square, and it should be integrated from 0 to L. Here exactly the principle of superposition comes to play. We assume that the entire rod is made out of innumerable number of such small disks, or disks of elementary thickness or differential thickness or infinitesimally small thickness. And we have come up till this particular point, and we will take out the constant terms as usual. Of course, pi should be there, 0 to L dx over d1 minus kx whole square, and we will take it up. It will become d1 minus kx to the power of minus 2. When we integrate, it is minus 2 plus 1. It becomes minus 1, and minus 1 is the coefficient which will come over here, and it is the coefficient of the variable that will also come over here. The coefficient of variable here is x, therefore the coefficient of a variable is minus k. Minus k will also come into picture over here, so this will become positive k. Okay, next we will apply the limits. We will apply the limits now. because we have differentiated, and we will take it to the bottom because it is 1 d1 minus kx to the power of minus 1, and we will just take it down once again. There is nothing wrong in doing that, you know that. And we will apply the limits, upper limit first and lower limit next, and we will get, when we apply the upper limit, it is 1 over d1 minus kl, 1 over d1 minus kl minus 1 over d1. When we apply 0, this will cancel away and we will be left with only 1 over d1. As we continue further, we will simply simplify this by replacing k by d1 minus d2 divided by L. So L and L will get cancelled and we will be left with 1 over d1 minus d2 minus 1 over d1. So d1 will get cancelled, it will get cancelled, and we will be left with 1 over minus 1 over d1 minus 1 over d1. 1 over d2 minus 1 over d1. Of course, E is there missing, it is continuously, so I will replace that. I will quickly write that. Okay, and we will continue 4p over pi ek, and we will simplify that by taking LCM. LCM definitely d1 into d2 and d1 minus d2. And once again we will substitute for k. D1 minus d2 divided by L for k, and we will be just obtaining 4pl pi e d1 into d2 as the elongation of the rod, entire rod. Okay, and this particular derivation has the backdrop of principle of superposition, because we considered the elongation that would happen for an elementary disk, and we also assumed that the entire rod is made out of innumerable number of disks. We added the individual effects, and it is going to be it was an addition. There is no subtraction anywhere, because every disk was subjected to tension, was subjected to elongation. Right. Derivation 2, magnitude of elongation of a tapering bar of uniform thickness. A bar, idealized bar looking something like this, with A at one end, B at the other end, thickness being T, and it will look like this in a three-dimensional view. This is the bar, and it has been idealized into two-dimensional figure, and loads are applied axially. Of course, that is the precursor. Change in width per unit length of the bar equal to A minus B divided by L. A here, B over here divided by L, and that will give us, okay, change in length, change in width, this is the width, or depth, we can assume depth also, nothing, no problem. Change in width divided by per unit length of the bar, it is A minus B by L. We will assume it to be K in order to simplify our derivation. That's all. The diameter of this elementary disk at a distance x, it is not the diameter, once again, it is the width of this elementary disk at a distance x from the left end is A minus kx. It cannot be A, it is something less than A. That something less comes from the unit change for the unit length into x, because we have traveled to a distance x, we have moved to a distance x, and there we have considered a disk. And of course dimensions are written. The area of cross section of the disk is the height into thickness, A minus kx into t, A minus kx into t. This is the area of cross section of this elementary disk. This because this is the width at that particular point, and this is the thickness. Increase in length of this flat disk is P dx PL by AE. L for this is dx, PL by AE. Okay, and A is this area of cross section of the elementary disk is A minus kx into t. Right. Increase in length of the entire bar is therefore is integration from 0 to L P into dx over A minus kx into t into E. And P by TE, we will take out we will separate this constant term, and we will have only the term which contains the variable. The variable is here, and this is to the power 1. So whenever we come across integration of such terms, it will be log. Okay, p by t, you know that log of a minus kx, okay, and minus k, which will come out as the coefficient of x, which will be over here, and 0 to l. And we will take out the minus sign and k also out. P over minus kt, it is log a minus kl when we apply the upper limit. Log a minus kl minus log a. When we apply 0, it will be, this will vanish, this will do away, and we will be left with log a. And further simplification will give us p by kt log a, and we have substituted for k the expression, that is a minus b divided by l, and the ll will get cancelled, and we will be left with log a minus b minus log a. So log a will get cancelled, yeah, and we will be left with log b minus log b minus log a. When we multiply with this minus, this will become log a minus log b. This minus and minus will become plus, and this is already plus. Minus into minus is plus, and this minus will once again make log b to be minus log b. So log a minus log b. So p over kt into log a minus log b. And this can be written as p over kt log of a minus b according to logarithm rules, logarithm function rules. And when we expand for, when we substitute for k, we will get PL, because this k is a minus b divided by l. L will go up in the and occupy the numerator, and we will be left with PL over a minus b into t into a log a by b. And this is the expression. With this, we come to a close of two important derivations. And in our next tutorial, we will try solving problems it again. And by this point of time, I think we have solved around 15 problems, if I remember correctly. And we will further move on problems only of complex nature. Of course, the next tutorial will bring the problems of complex nature, and the use of this formula will also be included. And we will deal with the problems of practical interest, of engineering interest, and the problems are chosen from real world examples. So until I come to you once again with a new tutorial. Bye. And if you have liked this video, kindly subscribe to my channel. Thank you.